Hi guys, welcome back. Another mysterious box on the table. Not actually that mysterious because you'll have seen the thumbnail by now, but let's pretend that you haven't and do an unboxing of sorts. Before we do that, I'm quite taken with the design of this lid. So there's an escutcheon in the middle of sorts that you could put a monogram on, so your initials. No one's done that on this one, but I think that's the purpose. That's usually the case. Sometimes there's silver plate. In this case, it's brass. This decorative ring here, though, is also a carrying handle, which is quite cool, with a little nail indent here for you to lift it up, and a cutaway here to help you do that, and then it sits so flush that you wouldn't even know that it was a handle. So nice little touch. So you can carry it around with the latches closed, or the lock shut, I should say, on this. This doesn't have front latches, as pistol boxes often do. Given it away, haven't I? As if the thumbnail hadn't already. These are, in fact, pistols, percussion pistols. A pair of somewhat accurate pistols in a box, which, as we've previously discussed on this series, traditionally would be called dueling pistols. You could use them for dueling, you could also use them for lots of other things, and what they really are is a fashion of pistol of an era. A gentleman's pistol, or pair of, because lots of things come in pairs, not just pistols for dueling. By this time, absolutely, people would be calling these dueling pistols, and you might even use them for that purpose. That's not the reason that I've chosen to show you them. It's more that they are quite technically interesting. So we'll pop one out to have a look at. Riviere gunmaker. Now that is Isaac Riviere, and he has patented this design, and I'll explain the technical side in just a moment. Patented in 1825, and he says on his trade label here what that is. So he is patentee for the guns without locks, which is an unusual turn of phrase there. Now, the Riviere family are a family of immigrants to Britain, so I don't know if that's a difficulty with English thing, or more just an idiosyncratic turn of phrase, or possibly even a period turn of phrase. Nonetheless, that's what's said. And it's a little bit unusual to have that sort of so blatantly on your trade label. You would normally say, if you say anything at all, maker of guns, pistols, and whatever else you want to market on your labels. The idea being that, people show their friends what they've bought. Gun retailers will have lids open of cases in their shops, in the window, or on shelves, and people will see you're advertising the very thing that's right in front of you. They're absolutely fascinating things, and some people collect the loose labels that sometimes exist, and people will perhaps even buy an empty case because it has an interesting label. And the really big front and center, as it were, feature of this label is a version of the Royal Arms, because the Riviere family are gunmakers to His Majesty. So the Rivieres are based in London, as the label also says, and they're pretty well known and pretty celebrated, and a generational family of makers, as they often are, these makers. And actually, which brings me to a weird connection. Now, I've grabbed these mainly for their unusual design, but there's a weird connection back to, yet again, to my book on British bullpups. Because the very first bullpup firearm that we've been able to identify, originally dated circa 1864, which I think is based on the dates of Isaac Riviere's son, Henry, who is thought to be the maker of this rifle. So it's a muzzle loader. There's a picture in my book. We'll see if we can put that up for you. Weird to have a bullpup muzzle loader, so it has the breech end behind the trigger, behind the grip, to make the whole thing shorter but have a long barrel. You think, well, what's the advantage of that with a muzzle loader? And the best guess is that this was actually a sort of bench rest target gun, and it was easier to reload it to get around the front of it on a bench without having to pick it up. So it's a really niche bit of kit. But belonged to someone who's interested in optics. There's a whole story around that gun that's really interesting. That's down at the National Rifle Association Museum at Bisley. If you're visiting the famous shooting centre at Bisley at any point, see if the museum is open and you can see the first ever bullpup firearm. Now, I suspected when I wrote about that rifle could in fact be, there's nothing really, and I'm prepared to be corrected on this, hasn't happened just yet, that it could have been made by Henry's father, Isaac, who is this guy, who is patenting this design in 1825 and operating through into the middle of the century. That thing is, could be one of the last things that Isaac did. So what are these? Let's just park this a little bit more out of the way so we can get a proper look at this. Now, don't be alarmed by this mark here. This is one of the methods we've used for marking objects historically. It is not permanent, it is reversible. In fact, this is the preferred way of marking a museum object, somewhere discreetly so that you can't immediately see it if it's on display, but it can't get rubbed off. But it is there for auditing purposes, tracking purposes, so you know what the heck you're looking at. Now, something distinctive like this might not be too hard to work out which one it is in your catalogue, but when you have Sea Service pistol number 5007, you need an object number. So you'll see our tags on things. We take them off for these videos, but the ideal is to have a tag on there and a reversible marking. So just a bit of behind the curtain for you there, just to explain why there's red ink on this gun. It's not on the gun, it's on a substance called paraloid B72, if you want to get really technical, and it comes off with acetone. So it doesn't do any harm to the object. We can reverse that at any time. Right, markings-wise, just reinforcing that this is in fact Riviere, which we know is Isaac Riviere, London, on the top flat of this octagonal barrel, which was the fashion of the day, as is the half stock. And then typically you'll have a cap on the end of the stock because otherwise it might sort of splinter or just look not very nice. You do sometimes get them plain, just carved smooth. This does have a cap, and this appears to be, as do the other bits of furniture, so this plate around the barrel key, as it's called, this pin here, and a couple of other, well, the trigger guard notably, appear to be blued iron. There are traces of bluing still on here. So these would have looked even nicer when they were brand new. But a couple of centuries of handling have dulled the bluing, and that almost looks like a silver cap now because it's lost nearly all of its bluing. But I can just make it out there. So. Other finishes, so the barrel is actually, or was, browned with, it's another sort of constructed barrel, forge welded together from strips of iron. And then this actually hooks into what's called a standing breech, which is where my finger is under the hammer. So for cleaning, you would actually pop out the key, hook out the barrel, give it a clean, and then you just slot it back in without getting any cleaning products or anything on the rest of the gun. That's a standard feature of, well, pistols and sporting guns, and rifles even, of this period. So there's something close to what we would normally call a trophy of arms. There's the oval shield of Britannia with the Union flag on it there. There are musical instruments in there. There's not much in the way of weaponry, so I probably wouldn't call it a trophy of arms, but an interesting patriotic decoration there. And what I would instinctively want to call Belgian style engraving, but it's not unique to the Belgians by any means, and it's foliate style engraving, where you're removing quite a bit of the iron, so it's quite deep, and it's sort of naturalistic looking. It's a choice, as a customer, whether you're seeing this on the shelf or whether you're commissioning it as a custom piece or a semi-custom piece. That's something you might choose. We've featured weapons with that sort of decoration a number of times already, and that includes a sort of sunflower amidst the tendrils. So quite a nice design, I think. Understatement, probably. And what I very much, I always enjoy, which is what's called a dolphin style hammer. And if we just bring it up to the half-cock position there, hopefully you can see it. It has a little face with an eye and a mouth, or sort of, I guess, the corners of the mouth, because the mouth is, I think, meant to be the open face of the hammer, which is there to contain any cap fragments and to limit the flash from the cap going off. This is, of course, a percussion cap system. And you see the nipple there that it can be replaced because it will get eroded and hammered over time, literally. Has notches. It's squared off, so with a nipple key you can remove it, just like the nipples on the back of a Colt revolver cylinder, if you're more familiar with that sort of era, which is a few decades on from this, of course. So they call it a dolphin. It's really more of a traditional sea monster, such as you might see on an old map or something, because I don't know if Mr. Riviere ever saw a dolphin, but they don't have scales. No, the reality of that is it's a generic term that was used to describe a sea monster shape. And it's really just there because the shape of the hammer suggests a serpent or a sea monster. The practical feature is the cross-hatching, or knurling, if you like, which, although that's a specific term to a type of machinery, which this isn't. This is done by hand, which is just to give you the purchase you need to actually cock the thing. And sufficient amount of decoration that you've actually got it on the back of the hammer. There's even a little bit of decoration on the back of the hammer. So this is sort of simultaneously quite elaborate, but also understated at the same time, which is kind of what English pistols seem to be going for most of the time, is understated fanciness. So Riviere's nailed that one, I think. And we do have what's quite likely a platinum plug there. In fact, no, that is a platinum plug in the breech on the side, which you'll see on pistols of this era as well, and a platinum line on the breech as well. That's really just a decorative feature. Just adds a little flourish. You will see little touches of platinum and gold on these things. Spur on the trigger guard, checkering on the grip, front and rear sights, so dueling target. By this point, plinking at targets was a somewhat popular pastime. So, or just carrying them around, ready to defend yourself with. All sorts of purposes to which these could be put. No butt cap on here. They just leave the really nice figuring of the walnut, or sort of high grade walnut there. So most of this is pretty conventional for pistols of the era, albeit unique to this particular pair in terms of styling, like detailed styles, detailed decoration, I should say. But the sort of elephant or dolphin in the room is the slick-sided nature of this. So not only is there no side plate, which is not uncommon, there's usually a side nail or a bolt, as in more modern English, visible on the left side. Well, there's nothing on the left side of this, and there's nothing on the right side of this either. This is what's termed a lockless design. Now, it's only lockless if you regard the lock as, which we probably should, as a plate-based system. So just like a door lock or a lock on a chest. And it's believed that well, not just believed, it's a fact that they were transferable skills. So if you were a lock maker, lock filer, making locks for chests and doors, you might also be making them for guns. Certainly if you go far enough back. So 18th century and back, we know for a fact that's the case. Not always, but some of the time. So that's what they mean by a lock, something where the mechanism, the spring, the tumbler, the cock or the hammer is all built onto a plate on the outside of the gun. Do away with that and you have a lockless gun, and that's why we have guns without locks, the guns without locks. So how do they work if they don't have a lock? Well, think about, say, a number of different shotgun designs, notably modern shotguns, where the mechanism is buried within the stock, or even a box lock pistol. So we've covered at least two, I think, on the channel so far. where there is a lock, but it's built up from 2 side plates, a top plate, a slot in the middle for the cock or the hammer. Now that still has a lock because you're building the component parts onto those flat plates. So it's still regarded as a lock. It's just that you're constructing a casing rather than encasing it in wood. If we were to pop this out, which I'm not going to do because A, it's a risk to the woodwork especially, and B, we already have photos that someone has kindly created of these, probably I think might have been these very guns back in the day where they had not only removed the barrel but taken out what I'm still going to call a lock. Sorry Isaac, but the mechanism, the trigger mechanism. There we go. Let's go with a modern turn of phrase and call it a trigger mechanism. So this is essentially just a top and bottom strap, like a revolver grip almost, and they almost do run. Well, they run quite far down the grip. Bottom strap, top strap halfway down. Not enough to really give too much structural integrity necessarily, and they are supporting the lock components. The hammer is not centrally located like on a box lock. It's off to one side, almost out of the gun, but not constrained and pivoted on this very chunky top strap piece. So we'll show you how it looks inside, and it's actually mechanically very simple. You know, it's just a mainspring, a hammer with a notch or a bent, or two of those, because you've got to have half cock really, and that just engages the trigger. There's no secret sauce in here, another reason to not take it apart on camera. It's actually a straightforward mechanism, very much like what's normally on the inside of a lock plate. It's just that he's done away with the lock plate. So, you ask, why? Why would you do this? I'm not entirely sure. There isn't, on the face of it, a huge advantage to doing that. You could speculate it's to try to make the design more compact. Doesn't really do that. There's no reason why you couldn't have a lock plate here on the side. If anything, giving you more real estate for decorating the gun, because they haven't used this blank bit of wood to do anything. So I think, my take, is that it's a stylistic choice. Something a bit different. You know, I always imagine gentlemen in drawing rooms showing each other their impressive possessions. And what's more striking than a gun without a lock? Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget, as well as our online presence, our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, we do have real-life museums that you can come and visit here in the UK if you're fortunate enough to be in the area. If you are, we have our Bank Holiday Weekend in August event, which is jousting, which we are somewhat known for here. No guns, I'm afraid, but it's still extremely entertaining. People actually going at each other with extremely large pointy sticks at the end of the day. This is going to be the Smashes, as we have dubbed it, which is Australia versus England. So all the more incentive to come and see the rivalry on display in true medieval fashion here at the Armouries. But we'll see you again next week.